When a woman no longer loves you, the first thing she'll do isn't what you might expect. It won't be loud, it won't be dramatic, it won't be a tearful confession or a screaming match in the kitchen. It's much more subtle. It's withdrawal. And it begins quietly, almost invisibly, like a room slowly losing its warmth. You won't even notice it at first. That's the trap. You see, we often associate love with words and gestures, with affection and attention. But love also expresses itself in emotional energy, in how much a person is willing to invest in conflict, in repair, in reconnection. When a woman is still in love, she'll argue with you, she'll fight, she'll complain, she'll nag, she'll plead, not because she's difficult, but because she still cares. That frustration you hear in her voice, it's engagement. That's emotional engagement. That's the residue of hope. That's her saying, I still believe this is worth fixing. But the moment that emotion disappears, when she no longer raises her voice, when she no longer reacts, when she no longer even bothers to argue, that's when you should worry. But silence is not peace. Silence is surrender. Silence is the quiet funeral of emotional investment. And it doesn't look like anger, it looks like indifference. You'll notice it when you say something careless and she doesn't call you out on it. When you break a promise and she shrugs. When you disappoint her and she says it's fine and actually means it, not because it's truly fine, but because she no longer sees the point in telling you it's not. Withdrawal is how a woman begins to leave you emotionally before she ever walks out the door physically. And that process can be drawn out over weeks or months. It's not always linear. There might be moments where she seems affectionate again, where you get glimpses of the connection that once held you together. But those are flickers, not flames. They're the echoes of a love that's slowly losing its will to fight. And what's most dangerous is that it's easy to mistake this withdrawal for things getting better. Because the tension drops, the arguments stop, the air feels calmer. You might even think, we've turned a corner, but you haven't. You've just entered the final stage of detachment. She's no longer trying to be heard. She's accepted that you won't really listen. And that's not forgiveness, that's fatigue. This is why it's so important to pay attention to the absence of conflict. Not every silence is golden. Some silences are graves when the connection starts dying. It doesn't scream, it fades. It loses volume. She stops knocking on the door of your heart because she's convinced no one's home. She stops asking for more from you because she's decided you either can't give it or won't. And here's the tragic part. You might only realize what's happening once it's already too late, once her love has withered into resignation, once her silence has solidified into distance. You'll try to revive the relationship and be met with calm detachment. Not bitterness, because bitterness still burns with passion, but coldness, emotional flatline. She won't want revenge. She won't want closure. She'll just want out. That's why when a woman stops arguing, you don't celebrate. You ask yourself, what stopped mattering to her? When did I stop being worth the effort? What did she used to fight for that she now lets slide? Because those answers tell you everything. They reveal the slow disintegration of what was once sacred. This isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Most relationships don't end with a single betrayal or a single mistake. They end from 1,000 small wounds that go unnoticed and untreated. And emotional withdrawal is the scar tissue that forms over time when someone keeps reaching for connection and keeps finding empty space. So if you notice that she's gone quiet, not just verbally, but emotionally, don't misread it. Don't assume you've won. Don't tell yourself you've finally found peace. Understand what that silence really is. It's not relief. It's a goodbye that's still forming in her chest. A goodbye she hasn't said yet, but has already begun to feel. And if you're not ready for her to walk away, then you need to meet that silence with presence, not defensiveness, not denial, but presence, vulnerability, a willingness to listen without ego, because that's your only chance to reignite the part of her that once believed you were worth loving in the first place. By the time she stops arguing, it means she's already fought the war in her heart. and lost the will to fight for you. And that's when you lose her. Now, another sign, often misunderstood, often brushed aside, is the sudden shift in how she prioritizes her time and attention. It's subtle at first. She doesn't stop talking to you altogether. She doesn't move out or pack her things. What she does instead is begin to reallocate her energy, bit by bit, away from you and toward other parts of her life. Her focus shifts. Her tone softens in apathy. You become less central in her orbit, not because she's angry, but because you no longer hold gravity in her emotional universe. That's the second quiet signal. She stops making you a priority. Now, this isn't about being busy. Everyone's busy. Life is full. Jobs, obligations, family, distractions. Those things are constants. What changes is where the emotional energy goes. When a woman is in love, you are not just on her calendar, you are on her mind, her efforts, her attentiveness, the way she folds you into the small details of her day. Those aren't accidental. That's love in motion. That's her choosing over and over to integrate you into her world. And when she stops doing that, when she stops reaching out to you first, stops sharing her small joys and petty frustrations, stops asking what you think or how your day went, that's not negligence, that's a realignment. She's moving you out of the center. Not with malice, just with finality. You'll notice it when the invitations slow down, when the calls and texts feel obligatory, when you ask if she wants to do something and she answers with a vague maybe, or tells you she's got plans already. Not big plans, not life-changing plans, just enough to signal that you are no longer her first thought. You're not her refuge anymore. You're not the one she turns to when she's excited or worried or hurting. That role, if it's filled at all, has started to be replaced, either by solitude or by someone else who simply listens better. And this isn't revenge, it's not a game. Women rarely do this as punishment. It's not about making you jealous or trying to get your attention through manipulation. It's resignation. She's begun the process of emotional migration. She's not trying to hurt you. She's trying to stop hurting herself. It's painful and often confusing is how ordinary it all looks. There's no dramatic exit, no slammed doors, just small cancellations, missed dates, slower replies, less eye contact, less laughter, less warmth. You'll find yourself asking, what happened to us? But the truth is, you already know. You just didn't notice the accumulation. Or maybe you did, but you dismissed it as stress or hormones or a rough patch. And here's the bitter reality. When someone loves you, they make room for you, even when it's inconvenient, especially then, because love doesn't operate on surplus time, it operates on intention. So when a woman who once carved out moments for you now seems to constantly run out of time, you're not losing to her schedule, you're losing to her emotional exhaustion. She no longer sees the investment as worth the return. The moments she once built for you are now being redirected to work, to hobbies, to friends, to silence. And this creates a dangerous illusion. You may think she's just doing her own thing or finding herself, and that can sound noble. You may even tell yourself it's healthy. But deep down, you feel it, the gap, the missing presence. You're not imagining it. Her energy has moved. Her attention has found a new home. She's still physically there, maybe, but emotionally, she's halfway out. You might try to fix it by planning something thoughtful. A date, a gift, a gesture, and those things are not wrong. But by the time you're chasing her time, you've already fallen behind. Because what she needed wasn't just an event, it was for you to notice the quiet erosion before she had to make other plans, before she had to become someone who copes without you. And if you ask her directly, she may not even say that she's falling out of love. She might not even know how to explain it. Because this isn't always conscious, it's a slow dimming, a depletion. She didn't decide to stop prioritizing you. She just ran out of reasons not to. So when you see this happening, when her time starts being claimed by everything and everyone but you, don't blame her. And don't panic, but do take it seriously. Because love is a living thing. It grows with attention. It dies with neglect. And once she learns to live without you in the everyday rhythm of her life, It's only a matter of time before she forgets how to miss you. And that's when you've already become a memory, another sign. And this one is perhaps the most jarring, is when her eyes stop lighting up when you walk into the room. It's a change so subtle that most men don't catch it right away. You'll still hear her voice, you'll still see her smile, but that glimmer of joy, that unmistakable spark, fades. And the absence of that spark, it speaks louder than any argument, any silence, any goodbye ever could. Because in the beginning, her eyes told you everything. You didn't even have to ask if she was happy to see you. You knew there was a warmth, a softness, an energy that radiated from her the moment your presence touched hers. That look she gave you when she felt safe, when she admired you, when she trusted you. That wasn't a performance, it was real. It came from somewhere deep. But now, that look is gone, replaced not by hostility, but by neutrality. You've become ordinary, predictable, expected, and in her mind, something essential has changed. The magic has turned mundane. And this doesn't happen overnight, it happens in small moments. You come home and she barely glances up. You tell a story and she listens, but her eyes are elsewhere, her thoughts miles away. She used to look at you with wonder even when you said the dumbest things. Now it's as if your words are background noise. She might nod, she might even laugh politely, but you feel it. The absence of soul in her gaze, and it stings in a way that nothing else does, because it's not just about what she's doing, it's about what she no longer feels. The eye is a strange thing. It's the window not just to the soul, but to the temper of connection. And when that window closes or goes dark, it's not because she's hiding. It's because she no longer has anything to show. She has shut the curtains emotionally, and you're now standing outside waiting for a light that doesn't turn on. You might try to reignite it. You might start trying harder, making jokes, initiating conversations, buying gifts. And for a moment, it might work. You might see a flicker, but it won't last because you're treating the symptom, not the cause. That dimming didn't begin with you being less interesting. It began when she started detaching internally, when her emotional world slowly retracted away from yours. And when that happens, you can't simply act your way back into her heart. You have to reconnect. And that's a much deeper task. The tragedy is most men notice the look is gone, but don't know what it means. So they become insecure, they start questioning themselves, they get angry, frustrated, they accuse her of not caring or being distant. But all of that only pushes her further away because now you're confirming the very doubts she's been quietly nurturing. Doubts about whether the bond you once had is still strong enough to carry the weight of her vulnerability. What she wanted wasn't your jokes or attention. What she wanted was to feel seen. And that's ironic, isn't it? Her eyes no longer light up because she doesn't feel lit up inside. She doesn't feel like the woman you once looked at with wonder. She doesn't feel like she matters in the same way. She's not withdrawing to hurt you. She's withdrawing because she no longer feels reflected, cherished, or chosen. When a woman stops looking at you with warmth, it's often because you've stopped looking at her with the depth you once did. You've stopped being curious. You've stopped really listening. You've stopped holding space for her dreams, her fears, her subtleties. And over time, her soul has gone quiet in your presence. So her eyes follow. And that's the moment you have to decide, not to beg, not to demand, but to wake up, to remember who you were when she looked at you like you were her world. To ask yourself if you're still showing up with that same fire, that same presence, that same unwavering attention. Because if she's no longer shining, maybe it's because the light between you both has been neglected for too long. Because finding that part in you is not too late to revive it. Not always. But you cannot fake this. You have to reach deeper, not into her, but into yourself. Find the part of you that was captivated by her mystery, moved by her laughter, committed to her spirit. Bring that part back into the room, not as a tactic, but as a truth. Because when a woman no longer looks at you with light in her eyes, it's not her eyes that have changed, it's her heart. And to reach that again, you'll have to stop trying to impress her and start trying to truly understand her. That's when the light returns. She begins to pull away from shared routines, not with hostility, not with overt rejection, but with a quiet, gradual distance that's almost unnoticeable at first. Maybe she no longer wants to have dinner at the usual spot, or she starts suggesting plans that don't include you. Maybe she used to curl up next to you while watching movies, and now she sits a few inches farther away. And the rituals you built together, those seemingly insignificant habits that quietly form the rhythm of your relationship, begin to fade. And it's not accidental. It's deliberate. It's subtle. It's strategic. Because when a woman stops loving you, the first thing she does is test how much she still feels by removing herself from what once felt natural. There's a particular kind of sorrow that enters a man's life when this begins to happen, and often he doesn't even know why he feels it. Something feels off, but he can't quite place it. The good morning texts arrive later. The laughter feels less frequent. The shared playlists you used to listen to together are now replaced with earbuds and private soundtracks. The shared space begins to divide, not with walls or arguments, but with absence. She's pulling away not to hurt you, but to figure out who she is again without you. You have to understand this. When a woman begins to fall out of love, she doesn't typically make a declaration. She withdraws. She reclaims her independence in fragments. She begins showing you, without saying it, her identity from yours. And it's not always dramatic. That's the danger. You don't see it coming because it doesn't announce itself. It creeps, one lost routine at a time. What once was us becomes me. Her favorite shows become hers again, not yours to share. She stops asking for your opinion on decisions, even the little ones. And maybe it's not that she's angry. In fact, that's the part that confuses most men. She's not angry. She might still smile. She might still be polite. But that emotional investment, that thread of intimacy woven through daily habits is unraveling. And the deeper truth here is that those routines weren't just habits. They were symbols. Symbols of a bond, of a shared life, of a mutual rhythm. When she breaks from them, she's not just altering behavior. She's testing emotional separation. She's asking herself silently, how would life feel if I did this alone? And if the answer feels liberating instead of lonely, then the relationship is already bleeding, whether or not you've acknowledged the wound. What's so difficult for men in this situation is that we often don't place as much emotional weight on these shared rituals. We might think, so what if she's not texting as much? Or maybe she's just tired. But that's the mistake. The mistake is not noticing the shift when it happens, and worse, not asking why it's happening. Because once it's far enough gone, it's incredibly hard to reclaim. She's pulling back from shared experiences to see who she becomes without you. And that's terrifying if you're the one being left behind. But the worst part is when you don't even see it coming. When you think everything's fine because the fights have stopped. Because she seems chill. But the absence of conflict doesn't mean closeness. Sometimes it means she's too detached to argue anymore. Sometimes silence isn't peace, it's the beginning of departure. And you'll notice that her life begins to look different. She fills her schedule with things that don't involve you. She talks about new interests, new people, new goals. And there's this strange undertone of finality in her voice when she says, I just need to do this for myself. That's not exploration, that's exit preparation. You might be tempted to chase her at this point, to reintroduce those shared experiences. You'll want to pull her back into your orbit. Remind her of what you had. But if it's desperation driving you, she'll sense it. And it won't work because she doesn't want to be pulled back into something that she's already emotionally exiting. You can't drag someone back to a table they've already stopped eating at. The only real hope, if there still is any, is to notice early, to listen when the routines shift, to be attentive, not controlling, curious, not insecure. You don't fix this by forcing her back into habits. You fix this by waking up and asking, where did the connection weaken? When did I stop showing up with presence? When did we last really see each other, not just live side by side? Because it's in the smallest things, the inside jokes, the routines, the rituals, that love sustains itself. And when those begin to vanish, so does the relationship, quietly, consistently, and eventually completely. So when she starts pulling away from what you used to do together, don't ignore it, don't downplay it, recognize it for what it is. The first sign she's asking herself if she still belongs in your life. And if you want her to stay, that answer needs to come from how you respond, not how you react. There's a distinct moment, one most men overlook, when a woman's tone changes. It's not just what she says, it's how she says it. You'll notice that warmth starts to cool. The voice that used to carry affection, even in disagreement, becomes colder, sharper, or worse, indifferent. And that change in tone isn't random, it's intentional, whether she's fully aware of it or not. Because when a woman no longer loves you, her emotional investment in how her words land begins to diminish. She's not trying to nurture connection anymore, she's protecting distance. You see, language between two people in love isn't just about exchanging information. It's about signaling care, offering softness, building intimacy through even the smallest conversations. When she's in love, her voice reflects that care. There's inflection, attention, gentleness, maybe even playfulness. But when the affection fades, so does the effort in how she speaks. Words become functional, tone becomes flat. She no longer filters or considers how things will affect you. Because frankly, she doesn't feel as responsible for your emotional experience anymore. This shift is subtle at first. Maybe you bring something up that used to spark laughter or at least curiosity, and now it's met with a tired yeah or a dismissive okay. You feel it in your gut. The absence of enthusiasm, the lack of reaction. And worse yet, if you ask about it, if you question the tone, she might say nothing's wrong, but everything's wrong. Because something essential has left the room, her emotional presence. Sometimes it swings the other way too. The tone turns sarcastic, mocking, or passive-aggressive. You hear more sighs than sentences. Her words may become laced with criticism, but not the kind that invites growth. It's the kind that tears, that belittles, that says, I've already given up on being understood, so now I just want you to feel what I feel. Frustration, resentment, fatigue. And at that point, it's not even about resolving anything. It's about expression for the sake of release, not repair. This is what men often miss. We hear the words, but we don't always register the meaning in the delivery. We focus on content instead of tone, and that's a mistake. Because when love is active, tone is careful. It seeks to connect. But when love fades, tone becomes careless, or worse, cold. She's no longer asking, how do I make him feel heard? She's asking, how do I get through this without breaking more than I already have? And let's be honest, sometimes this change is earned. Maybe you've stopped listening with real attention. Maybe you've taken her presence for granted. Maybe you've been defensive instead of open. That happens. But none of that changes the fact that once her tone shifts, it's a sign she's testing the limits of what she still feels. And you can't talk your way out of that. You can't debate her back into softness. You can't argue your way into affection. You have to live your way back into it. If you want to change her tone, you need to give her a reason to believe that you're still emotionally present, that you're still choosing her, not just in words, but in attention, effort, vulnerability. Because when a woman loves you, her voice reflects it, even when she's upset. But when she no longer feels connected, her tone reveals the truth before her words ever do. Now here's the dangerous part. Some men get used to the change. They adapt to the coldness. They normalize the silence or the edge in her voice, and they tell themselves, that's just how she is now. No, that's not how she is. That's how she feels about you now. There's a difference. She's showing you that the emotional bridge between you has collapsed. And if you don't notice, or worse, if you don't care, then the relationship's already over, even if you're still living under the same roof. Tone is the soul of communication. It carries what the heart is afraid or unwilling to say out loud. It's where true feelings live. And when love begins to die, tone is the first to grieve. You'll hear it before you see it. You'll feel it before she admits it. So don't dismiss that sigh. Don't ignore the way her voice cracks or cuts or cools. It's not just stress. It's not just hormones. It's not just a bad day. It's a quiet declaration. I don't feel safe, seen, or loved anymore. And if you truly care, if the relationship still matters, then listen not just to her words, but to the way she says them, because love has a sound, and so does its absence. One of the final, most heartbreaking signs you'll encounter when a woman no longer loves you is her emotional absence in moments that used to matter to both of you. Not the big fights, not the dramatic exits, but the small, everyday moments where you used to feel her presence. Those are the ones that vanish first. She stops checking in on how your day was. She forgets that your big presentation was this morning. She doesn't notice the tired look in your eyes. And it's not because she's suddenly too busy or distracted. It's because her heart has begun detaching, not in one loud explosion, but in a quiet, consistent withdrawal. This is what many men fail to recognize because they're looking for an event, something obvious, a slammed door, a breakup text, a confrontation. But most love doesn't end in noise. It ends in silence. She stops laughing at your jokes. She no longer teases you or touches your arm when she walks by. She may still be in the room, still doing the dishes, still replying to your questions, but her spirit, the warmth, the light, the emotional investment is already somewhere else. And if you're not attuned to that, if you're not paying attention, it can feel like everything is fine. That's the illusion. She's polite, she's functional, she's showing up to dinner, but she's no longer there. Her absence becomes present. And when she used to be your emotional home, that void is haunting. There's no conversation that truly lands, no shared moment that feels alive, just two people moving parallel through space, avoiding the collision that truth would bring. The deeper tragedy is that by the time a woman gets to this point, she's probably been grieving the relationship for weeks, maybe even months. She's cried the tears you'll never see. She's had the internal debates you won't hear. She's pulled back her affections carefully, slowly, almost surgically, until the final stitch was cut. That's why it feels so sudden to the man. But it wasn't sudden to her. It was a long goodbye, she said quietly over time, while still making your coffee or folding the laundry or replying, I'm fine, when she wasn't. And in that space where love used to live, you'll feel a weight, a dull heaviness, because her presence used to lift the room. Her joy was something you may have taken for granted until it wasn't there anymore. You might start trying harder, telling jokes, planning a weekend away, buying flowers. But by then, those gestures don't feel like love to her. They feel like regret. They feel reactive, too late. Now, you might ask, what do you do when you feel that emptiness, when her love is gone, but her body is still present? You begin by taking honest inventory of how long you've been emotionally absent yourself, how long you've failed to nurture the relationship with curiosity, gratitude, attention. Because no woman wakes up one morning and decides she doesn't love you anymore. It's erosion. The slow weathering of neglect is the death by 1,000 tiny dismissals. And in those last stages, if she's still there physically, what she's really doing is waiting for you to prove her wrong about the decision she's already made internally. She's watching to see if the man she once believed in is still buried beneath the man who's drifted into comfort and assumption. She's not looking for perfection. She's not expecting grand apologies. She's looking for a felt shift, not words, energy, intention, courage. Because if there's one thing a woman never forgets, it's how a man made her feel. If she felt emotionally seen, safe, cherished, she'll fight for that connection. She'll bend, she'll communicate. But when she feels invisible, unimportant, or alone in the relationship, she won't always tell you. She'll just slowly stop showing up, and by the time you notice, she's already begun imagining life without you. So don't look for drama. Don't wait for the shouting or the tears. Watch for the quiet exit. Listen for the absence of laughter. Feel the coldness in the bed next to you, even when her body is there. And don't pretend it's fine just because the house is quiet. It's not peace, it's emotional distance. That's what makes it so painful. It's not that she's yelling, it's that she's no longer trying. And when someone stops trying, that's not silence, it's the sound of goodbye.